You're listening to Win-Win, an entrepreneurial community with your host, Ben Wolf.
And welcome to Win-Win, an entrepreneurial community. This is Ben Wolf, your host as always. As usual, I encourage everybody to subscribe to the channel wherever you are listening to or watching it, whether that's YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, etc. Definitely leave a review, especially with words on it. 5-star review, not just even just the stars, but it's going to definitely make it more accessible to other people, and I encourage you to do that and share the value with yourself in the future as you get the updates, and with other people by making it come up higher in the algorithms and these fancy platforms by making sure people see it. So with that, I do want to get into introducing our guest today. I'm very happy to have, I think, maybe the first guest of this type that we are having here. So this is a big day for Win-Win and entrepreneurial community. Yeah. So we're going to talk about how to use data effectively to align marketing, sales, and operations from the perspective of an outsourced COO, outsourced Chief Operating Officer. Our guest today is the founder and CEO of Envisionable for over 5 years, through which he provides fractional Chief Operating Officer services to businesses virtually around the United States or locally in the Providence, Rhode Island area, or some people call it Rogue Island. Fascinating and varied background that he has includes being a chemist, a founder in the insurance and marketing spaces, and as a real estate investor, including currently. You can find out more about his work at envisionable.com. That's envisionable.com. And nice. With that, I give you John Boudreau. Welcome, John.
Hey, thanks for having me, Ben. Good to be here.
My pleasure. And, I guess I just want to get into first asking you what I ask all the guests, which is if you could just give me a quick 2-minute background and kind of a history, maybe the stuff that you wouldn't necessarily see from your LinkedIn page. Gives us a picture of like where you came from and how you got to be, what you're doing now for your clients.
Yeah, sure. It's an interesting kind of pathway that I took. I started my career as a chemist, actually. You mentioned an analytical chemist. Actually, prior to that, I went to grad school for a year. I was going to go into theoretical chemistry, but decided not to. Wow. Met my wife and said I need to get a job. So I got a job in chemistry doing analytical chemistry, working for an environmental testing laboratory. And did that from about 93 till about 2004. It was a great opportunity to learn how to solve problems, think critically, but always pretty entrepreneurial. So when I first got married back in 95, I started investing in real estate. I had a really good friend whose dad was a real estate investor. My friend was a real estate agent. And so I started investing in real estate here in Rhode Island. And by 2004, I had, I think, about 30 units. I purchased about 30 units and sort of made this critical step where I decided whether or not I wanted to keep it going in chemistry or I wasn't sure what next, but I knew that I wanted to start some type of company. And so I ended up transitioning out of chemistry, buying one more piece of property that allowed me to do that and generate enough cash flow. So that was 2004. I met a couple friends who were starting a marketing company, and we partnered up and started my first marketing company, and it was for real estate agencies, and grew that pretty rapidly. They decided that they wanted to sort of do something different. We parted ways, and I started another company back in 2006 that was initially focused on the mortgage industry, where we were developing software tools, marketing tools for mortgage. 2008, mortgage imploded, as you know, and we tried to figure out what to do next. We pivoted to the insurance industry and offering marketing services to that industry. And that really took off from about 2008 until I think 2011. They grew like about 1,600%. We were at that time, I think, doing somewhere around 12 million in recurring revenue. It was a subscription-based model. And we realized, hey, I was a COO, CFO at the time, and realized that we were this is kind of out of control. We need to, raise some capital. And we partnered up with a private equity firm called Sarant Capital, and raised a good amount of private equity. They came aboard, helped us to sort of develop the management team. And then through a variety of circumstances, through about 11 to 2015, I eventually became the CEO. And then in 2015 said, to private equity firm, I'm pretty much toasted. I need to move on and do something different. And so that's when I started my consulting, firm. But
and what did you learn from that experience in private equity? Because I understand that actually was very influential in the approach that, of what you're teaching clients to do or you're doing with them.
It was. I had the fortune of being coached by their operating partner, a guy by the name of Barry Obrand, who had been a CEO multiple times. And I actually had a weekly call with him, and he really helped me, improve as a manager, help the business to get aligned around specific goals. It was super challenging from a management perspective, but also just the market. The market was changing pretty rapidly. We had a lot of competitors coming in. So, but he was really, I have to credit him for being the one that really helped me. And the private equity firm was great. They were very helpful. That's where I learned a lot of, financial chops, I guess you say, in terms that I bring to companies, budgeting, planning, all that sort of thing. So it was really the weekly one-on-ones with Barry that really helped me develop my approach to management and helping these other companies.
Right. And, and I know from our conversations before how, your main focus in helping small businesses is getting them to the point where they could better and more effectively use data to bring clarity to their strategy, align their teams, their experience, and because we talked about the fact that, and I used the outsourced COO term before, because what you do is so overarching. So we use that term, but you told me you don't even use that term with your clients.
Right.
So how do you characterize what, what you do? Then and all of this by way of hopefully setting us up to be able to share tools and things that you can actually teach people they could use in their own business, even if they're not hiring an outsourced COO. But how do you characterize what you do?
Yeah, it's interesting because it goes everywhere, all the way from, startups that are trying to develop a business plan all the way to, probably $10, $20 million companies that are trying to, again, develop a plan and execute on that plan. So, when I started, I would go into a business and ask them, what are you trying to do? What are your goals? And what I was surprised to find was many of them didn't have goals.
Have you heard the Yogi Berra quote? They said that if you don't know where you're going, you're going to end up someplace else.
Right. No, I haven't heard that one. But I mean, that's, and it was surprising to me. And they'd say, I want to grow. Okay, well, how much do you want to grow? Like there was no real measurement that was attached to those goals. First off, they didn't have real goals. And then the second part, they didn't really have any way to determine whether or not they'd achieved those goals. And so I saw that pattern happen over and over and over again. And so, usually the first place I go when I go into an engagement is, what are your goals? And often, again, they don't have any. And so I bring them through a strategic planning process. And the type of strategic planning that I use is it's a very agile process. It's a very, we're not talking weeks and weeks and weeks and documents. And, we're talking about 2 days of just, brute force. Let's figure out a plan quickly and develop some goals so that
what are some of the main elements of that of that plan,
of that planning process? Yeah. So we start with
there's a 1 year quarterly, what does that consist of?
Yeah. Usually we do the strategic plan every year and we refresh it every year. And out of that plan comes a set of goals, a set of KPIs attached or key performance indicators that attach to those goals, and then who's responsible for each goal. And I really like using the balanced scorecard approach, where you have financial, customer, process, and internal internal processes and learning and growth. And so you have this cause and effect. You can create a strategy map that comes out of that meeting. And so now everybody knows what they're focused on, and everybody knows, whether or not they're successful with what we're focused on. And then out of that, I try to get the company into some type of meeting rhythm. So, and when I say some type, I mean typically a monthly meeting rhythm, where often they'll hire me to come in and actually run those meetings and determine, hey, are we hitting our goals or not? And so,
have you ever found? I'm just curious because obviously, as you know, that I'm an EOS implementer, and a fractional integrator for EOS companies. Yeah. So I see in what you're saying a lot of similar elements. In
very
terms
similar
of that planning process and a meeting rhythm, and I guess the question that comes to mind in the meeting rhythm you describe it, a monthly cadence, is do you ever find that that's not often enough? Meaning, like, because it's so long that goes by between meetings, that people get unfocused, and maybe they just kind of scramble the last few days before the monthly meeting to try to get in a better position. Do you ever find that, or like, I don't know? I'm just curious about how that works for you on the monthly thing, because maybe it's a great tool. I don't know.
I do. I think monthly is minimum. I mean, the management team should be meeting weekly to review those goals.
So who's monthly then? Who are you referring to there?
I'm talking about the management team.
Okay.
I'm talking about the core management, the team that's actually running the business. But at a minimum, they should be meeting monthly to review those goals. But what can happen is as you up the meeting frequency, so say you're meeting weekly, that's usually more operational or tactical things that they're doing to actually hit the more strategic goals. So for example, if your goal, your sales goal is, we need to do $1 million in revenue this month. Okay, you should be meeting weekly, reviewing the pipeline. Are you making enough calls? Are you doing enough demos? Do you have enough in your pipeline, to see if you're going to actually hit that goal. Right. So I usually don't get involved in more of the tactical stuff. Some customers I do, where they're really struggling maybe with actually doing the tactical stuff. Like, for example, one customer, we meet weekly and we review cash flow, because we developed this 13-week cash flow that keeps getting updated weekly, and they were getting stressed out because they felt they were going to run out of cash, and especially with this whole COVID thing that just went through. And said, well, let's meet weekly and we'll set up a weekly cash flow. And they weren't even familiar with that process of actually building a cash flow and reviewing it. Right. So it's those types of things I try to stay out of. I'm not really, what I enjoy doing is more of the strategic stuff, but I'll get into the more tactical things if needed, or put a process in place so they can execute on the tactical, and then we can review the more strategic on a monthly basis.
Right. Now, and so let's say there's business owners listening to this or watching this who are not able to, bring in somebody like you necessarily, or, maybe in the near future or whatever. Yeah. But like, what are 2 or 3 kind of big things that they should be thinking about doing in their business to, achieve the kind of alignment and execution that you work on with clients? Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll go back to, my sessions with Barry. I was talking about Barry O'Brand, and he'd ask me, John, what are you working on? And I rattle off 17 things. And he's like, John, you can't do that. There's too many things. You're not going to be good at them, and you have to pick your critical top 3 things. And so I think for a management team, they need to get together, and they need to, amongst that team, get an alignment around what they're focused on, say, this quarter. What are we trying to achieve this quarter? And you could break it down again into 4 categories. You could break it down into financial. What are we trying to accomplish financially? You could pick one goal. You could say, all right, we need to do X amount in sales. All right, good. You get your financial goal. Around the customer, what do we need to accomplish around the customer? How do we make sure that they're happy? And that's one thing you can focus on, customer happiness. How do we measure and make sure and know that the customer is happy? What often happens is everybody thinks the customer's happy, but there's no mechanism in place to measure whether or not they're happy. And so you sort of don't want to, put the, what do they call it? The rabbits in charge of the lettuce, so to speak, like, customers, service people in charge of, hey, whether or not the customers are happy.
Satisfaction, right?
Yeah. You want to measure that sometime.
So what kind of tools do you get clients to use for that?
Usually just NPS, Net Promoter Score, is one good one. But
actually did not know anything about that. I was talking to my old CEO actually this morning, and he was talking about their NPS score, and they got their app now. They force all their users to put it in. So
it's a great simple tool to use. I mean, it's a great simple tool to use. The trouble again is getting people to use it and implement it. Right. But some way to measure, is our customer happy? And trying to improve their happiness. And so what improves their happiness? Well, the way in which you deliver the product and service improves their happiness typically. Mm-hmm. And so what internal processes, that's the third one, what internal process or process do we need to improve on this quarter? Because your business is basically a string of processes. And, as you improve those, obviously, you're going to improve efficiency. You're going to improve delivery. There's a lot of great things happen, but pick one thing. So I'm trying to think of a customer I'm working with right now. One of the issues they're having is they're a manufacturing company, pretty unique one, where they actually heat treat highly critical parts for the military. Okay. And so they've got all these ovens and they're heat treating all these different ways. Kind of interesting from a chemistry perspective.
Right.
But
so
they're heat treating these things, and so they meet with their customer and they ask their customer what the turnaround time is, and so they've got a date where they have to turn that part around, but they know internally there's no way they're ever going to turn the part around in that time, and so they don't really tell the customer. The customer gets frustrated, and so they have no process to really determine the real turnaround time and communicate that back to the customer. Well, the customer's not happy, of course, that affects revenue.
Right.
So that's one process that they're working on. And, to be able to measure that, to be able to, communicate that back to the customer. So they just focus on that in a quarter. And then you find, well, if we want to do that, we might find that, boy, we need a special software tool. We need to be trained on a special software tool, for example, maybe in order to implement that. So that's the learning and growth piece. For them, this company I'm talking about, they're really trying to transition out of, it's a really interesting situation because there's three owners that are running the business, sort of like co-CEOs, tri-CEO model, which is a strange one. And they're trying to.
Sounds scary.
Yeah, it is. Well, but
I've been involved with people with Cerberus from Greek mythology.
Oh yes, yeah.
The three-headed dog.
Three-headed dog. Yeah.
That's what it makes me think of. Anyway, if they could do it,
it's not bad. They do a nice job with it, but what they really want to do long term, and this actually came up during the planning session, is we want to be able to transition out of the business and have, so we need to build up another layer of leadership below us. And so that's a big area of learning and growth. So I would say pick those 4 areas, pick one goal within each area, pick some type of KPI, key performance indicator that you can use to measure whether or not you're successful, get some type of tracking tool in place and meet on a monthly basis and do that.
That is super helpful. I mean, so I mean, what I'm hearing is, right, like instead of focusing on 27 things, I mean, then it's really not focusing on anything. Get it down to 3-4 main goals that you're focusing on at any given time. Let's say a quarter. Again, very parallel to what we do in EOS. But another main point I'm hearing from you that I'm hoping people heard is the fact that to try to to try to pick those, let's say 4 quarterly goals, but to be in a diversified area, learning and
Yes.
growth and revenue growth, and, to pick different customer experience and to pick different areas to make
Right.
sure that you're focusing not just like 3 or 4 goals, just all about revenue, and
Right.
everything else is following by the wayside.
Right. It's interesting because strategy, I've done a lot of study on strategy, and strategy is, it's something that there's a cause and effect relationship to it. And so it's
Mhm.
like, for example, if you're playing chess, and I don't play chess, but if you play chess, you're trying to project, if I move here, they'll move there, then
Right.
I move here. And so there's a cause and effect so that you can win. And so that's why I really love a strategy map. If you just Google strategy map, even in
Mhm.
your own, industry,
Mhm.
you'll find people have developed these. And so it's a cause and effect. So we're better at, we improve in these particular areas. It's going to improve our processes. We're going to have happier customers, which is going to drive revenue. And
Right.
so it's just really easy also to then take that map and bring it out to the entire company and say, this is our strategy this quarter.
Right.
And it just makes sense, as opposed to what you just said. We have 3 goals, and they're sort of not connected in any way,
Mhm.
and so if you just have 3 goals that you're just, let's try to accomplish it, that's really not a strategy.
Mhm.
And so
Right.
I'm
Part of a
not
larger picture, and
exactly
sharing with your people like what that process
right.
is and where this fits into it.
Right. And another way you can approach it is you can say, once you have those the sort of buckets, if you will, the perspectives they call them. What you can do is you can say to the team, hey, what are the, I call them fires. I think you got in EOS, they call them something different. But what are the things that we just keep on smashing our heads against the wall on every single month over month? Those are usually process things that are really not working correctly.
Mhm.
And so that gives you an idea where to start. If you just kind of started there, because every business should have happy customers. So that's kind of a standard one. Every business, you want to generate revenue and you want to be profitable. So if you just start there with the process piece, and there are consultants that are like lean consultants that
Yeah.
get into really the nitty gritties of process. But the clients that I work with, they're smaller companies, $5 to $20 million companies, and they need something that's quick and dirty and gets results quickly and aligns the team. And
Right.
so I found that this approach, works pretty well.
Right. That's very cool. Now, I know you developed some sort of software system also that you use to help
I
you
did.
do the clients. Well, where does that fit in? How is that used?
Yeah. So what was happening was I was going through that process, and oops, my microphone here. I was going through that process, and I found that I kept on kind of creating these Excel spreadsheets that,
Mhm.
I would use to track goals. And I, being from a software background, I said, well, I think I could build a piece of software that does this and then sell it as a part of the service. And that's what I did. I created a piece of software that allows you to track your goals. It links it to the KPIs,
Mhm.
and puts it in a format such that you can review it. Everybody can log into the tool. They can, enter the data into the tool. And so everybody sort of sees, again, on a monthly basis, what are we focused on and how we're doing. Are they red, yellow, and green? Each one of the goals has a red, yellow, and green.
Mhm.
You can go another layer down if you want to. So if you create a goal, there's typically initiatives. I call them initiatives. I think in EOS, the goals you'd call rocks, right?
For the
I think
quarterly
so.
goals are called rocks. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Quarterly
goals.
quarterly rocks, annual goals. That's the
Okay.
terminology.
So so anyway, the goals would, if you want to really break it down, you could say, all right, what are the initiatives that I need to happen over the week by week to make this goal a reality? And then you can even go further down, and there's to-dos that drive initiatives, which then drive goals. So it's
Cool.
I think it's a good tool. I just roll it into my consulting because it's easy to do, and it works.
Right. And well, and speaking of consulting, I did want to have a little time in our last 5 or 6 minutes together
Sure.
to talk about Okay, let's just, get a little more mechanics. Okay, somebody wants to work with an outsourced COO or whatever you call it, like you. So what does that look like? Is it monthly retainer, hourly, how many hours a week or month? How much does it cost? If you mind
Yeah.
sharing, how does that stuff generally work with the structure?
Yeah. I wish I had a specific, structure. It's like, I find that I customize things, talk
Ad
about
hoc for
processes.
each client.
I customize things a lot. I mean, I think,
Mhm.
it really, again, depends on the engagement. Well, but typically it involves an initial, offsite where we come up with,
That's the
the
2 days that
goals,
you talked
a
about
2-day
before. Yeah.
offsite, that's probably somewhere in the $5,000 range.
Hmm.
Um, and then, plus travel. And then, once that happens, we roll into the monthly. And usually the monthly, if you just want an hour a month with, doing with the software tied in, and I don't beat people up if they want to call me, if they want to text me, that's usually, I usually charge like $500 a month for that 1 hour session, which
Okay.
usually turns in a couple of sessions, or a couple hours at least a month. I do have
Hmm.
some clients that have me on
Interesting.
retainer and just, just pay me monthly, and they kind of have me whenever they want me, or whenever I'm available. That's that engagement. I do more of a weekly with them, where
Hmm.
that was the cash flow one, where I do a weekly cash flow. And then actually I get a call today at 2:00. Um, uh, we're talking on a Friday here, 2:00 on a Friday. Each Friday, I actually, do a call with their management team.
Hmm.
So it's all over the place. And if I do, like, for example, business plans, they're probably somewhere around 2,500. I'm not doing as many of those as of
Hmm.
late, just because I honestly really don't like doing them. It's just, it's tough. Uh, but I do, I've done a fair amount of financial modeling. So I'm kind of in a strange, weird place where I'm just, I've got a nice set of clients that I really love working with. Um, and that's not to say I wouldn't take another client, but it's just, it's a nice stress-free, scenario,
That's awesome.
which is nice. And, but of course, and again, it's usually, the bigger the client, the bigger the budget they have. If you're a $1
Right.
million company and you're really struggling, and I do this too, is like, I offer a free 60-minute strategy session.
Hmm.
I don't charge them anything. And really what
Hmm.
I try to do is add value during that call, because I really do I have a passion for small business people. And, I've been one. I know how hard it is. I know, the stress that they're under, and I try to add value. And there's been actually several scenarios where I've done that, and I've said, but I don't think I'm the guy to help you, but you can go here. And then they've
Right.
circled back to me, and we've ended up working together. So I just try to add value,
Yeah.
and then, if you work with someone and it's just not working out, you want to quickly, um, you know, I
Get to
wouldn't
the
say
next thing.
sever the relationship, but you want to
Yeah.
quickly get out of that relationship, because you're really not adding value. These small business
Right.
people don't have a lot of time. So you got to make sure you add value as quickly as possible. And if you're not, okay, no harm, no foul. It's okay. Move on to someone else, or, I'm happy to, I'm happy to move on. So I don't lock people into long-term contracts. I just think that's, I don't feel good about it. So
Right. No, it's very cool. Look, and I appreciate the value you've been able to share just on this conversation
thanks.
with getting clarity. Again, there's might be, there's some listeners and viewers who are in this audience who are doing EOS, and they're very much part of that strategy. Probably the majority are not.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm just really appreciative to be able to have you on and get another perspective
Sure.
on, I guess, number one, how somebody can use a fractional resource for operations, for general operations, kind of
Yeah.
overarching, not just a specialist like in CFO or in
Right.
or a CMO, a fractional head of sales, or a CIO. So I think that's really interesting. It's similar to what I do as a fractional integrator, being very overall in the business.
Yeah.
And to hear the approach that you take to that and what people can learn from, even if they're doing it on their own, to just focus on fewer things, see how it fits within the process, communicate it with people, and create KPIs and weekly, regular meeting pulse to create accountability around that. Obviously, it's easier said than done, and that's what EOS is all about. Obviously, you can contact me, Ben Wolf, or John to get help on that and learn about EOS. Go to wolfsedgeconsulting.com, my business, or envisionable.com, envisionable.com, envisionable.com for John Boudreau's company, or to set up that 1-hour conversation with him. Again, virtually throughout the country. You can reach out to him if you want to get John's perspective. So definitely encourage that, and appreciate everything you're able to share and teach today.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity. I think you said something that kind of sparked my thinking, and it was, I think it's nice to be able to have more of an overarching effect, because if you just kind of jump in and try to affect one little piece of the business, but it's not really heading in the right direction. I always like to say, like, are we going to Chicago or California? Like, let's figure that out first. Right. It's once we figure that out, then we can get into the more detailed stuff. And so that's what I enjoy doing. Like, let's make sure you're going in the right direction first. Mm-hmm. And again, that 60-minute call, that's usually what I can help people do. And I quickly try to opt myself out if I'm not the right fit. So. Right.
Yeah, that's great. Obviously, I'm sure you'll help connect people to the right resource. Obviously, contact me or whatever. I can do the same thing, connect you to the right person, or help. But we really appreciate it. Thank you very much for coming on. And
thanks, Ben.
No problem.
Been great.
Thank you. Glad you could come, and we'll see everybody else on this side. Bye.
You're listening to Win-Win, an entrepreneurial community with your host, Ben Wolf.